Hello. 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 Hello.
Hope you're well. Welcome to this stream. Hello, everyone. Sorry, excuse this. I'm trying some new tech out today, and I haven't got a Bluetooth headset, so I'm wired. And, got a weird mic coming out here, so please bear with me. But let me know if you can't hear me at the back. You okay? Can you hear me okay? Brill. Okay, so good evening, everyone. It's great to see so many data enthusiasts here at the Leeds Power BI Data and Analytics user group. So thank you all for making the effort to come here. Big thank you, first of all, to Hippo Digital, who provided the space and sponsors for this evening. Emma Thornton at the back there. So thank you for your support today for this thriving sort of Leeds-based community. So tonight is all about sharing, connecting, learning, and we've got some of the brightest minds in the data industry with us today, sharing their insights with you. So hopefully we're all ready for a nice, exciting session today. The only thing I guess better than tonight's session will be tonight's session with pizza, which we've also got later on as well. So looking forward to that. We've got two incredible sessions for this evening. Najum Khan, who will be sharing his life-saving data and how that works within the NHS and transforming the NHS themselves. And trust me, you don't want to miss this. Then we've got Steve Campbell, who's going to take us through DAX fundamentals with what is filter context. And I think that's definitely something I need to look at as well, because as soon as that comes into play within a live environment, knowing what a filter context is very, very important. So this is first of very many events that we've got lined up for this year, and hopefully it's going to be the biggest one for the group. So let's go ahead and get started. So for this evening schedule, we're going to start, well, we just started now on our intro. We've got a speaker coming up in around 5 minutes time. We'll have a break at 7 o'clock. Speaker 2 around 10 past. We'll have pizza networking around 8 o'clock. Close at around 8:45. And then anyone that wants to come out onto the town afterwards with a few of us, you're welcome to join us for a drink or two. Just quickly about myself. So I've been working with BI since 2005. Actually, it looks like 2005 years I've been working for, but actually that's incorrect. I need to change that. It was because I put 15 years and I change it every time. So since 2005 I've been working in IT, and since 2007 I've been working with sort of BI, and that started early in the sort of Microsoft SSRS I think they had back then, and PowerView, PowerPoint and all that sort of jazz. I worked with local, national, international clients. I'm a Power BI trainer, speaker and consultant. I've got a YouTube channel, the BI WizKid. In 2018, I started to co-organise the Manchester Power BI and Fabric user group. And then 2020, I decided to start and run and organise the Leeds one as well, which has been going for a while. It's been a little bit stop and start, but hopefully this year will be slightly different for us. I've already thanked them, but yeah, thanks to Hippo Digital for providing the space. It's a digital services partner that supports organisations to deliver the very best experiences for users. Something else I thought was quite interesting is why they actually called Hippo. Being connected to the iconic semi-aquatic mammal gives us immediate talking point, especially with all the hippo-related artwork around the offices. When people join us, they become a hippo, part of the herd, which reinforces our brand and makes us feel even more connected to our name. Okay, so thank you again for providing the space for us. Some updates and I guess some expectations, what you guys expect from the sessions that we hold here. First of all, well, what happened last year? So we had a couple of sponsors, and we also worked with Robert Walters throughout the year, but then towards the end, around sort of July, I think was our last session that we had. Unfortunately, Robert Walters decided to pull out, which left me on my own. And so I was sort of battling the second half of last year, trying to get speakers as well as doing all the work and everything else. And it was just too much for me to sort of get going, last year. So I thought, right, let's plan it out properly for this year. And so this year I've already got 11 dates already set in the diary. So month on month, from this month till November, we've got 11 events already planned in with dates. We've got sessionized links for the speakers. So whereas before we were firefighting every month to try and get speakers, now we've got a sessionized link and people from around the world. We've got some really good speakers actually coming up in the next few months. But speakers now from around the world and other user groups can now join and make sure they get an opportunity to speak with us here in Leeds. And this year, again, we've got new sponsors and new locations as well. So including sort of Hippo, we've also got a couple of other locations and sponsors that are working with as well. So hopefully there'll be a few different locations for us to sort of visit. So the user group is now open to everything data related, whereas before it was a Power BI user group. And with all the changes in data and analytics and all the other sort of third-party tools that you can get, we've expanded it to include Amazon and Google Workspaces and analytics and all the other tool sets that complement data. And it's not just about Microsoft. It's not just about Power BI. It's about anything data related. The expectations are to share knowledge, experience, and expertise to each one of you as well. So please share, comment, leave feedback on our meetups. It's really important that we sort of spread the word. And I think that sort of moves nicely into the social slide. So there's a few QR codes you can use. Please sort of take pictures, share them on your sort of LinkedIn page. It's really important, depending on your sort of reasons for being here, sort of to share and navigate and engage with the community that you have, especially with data online. Sharing actively sort of connects with other like-minded professionals online as well. It showcases that you're involved in the community, you're always learning, you're always sort of moving forward with the technologies. And feedback that you provide, insights, also help sort of make this community and this, especially this Leeds-based tech community, a lot bigger than it is at the moment. So please take photos, connect with myself. If you do ever tag a post, tag me in. We'll sort of push that out as well, just to show that you attended as well. If you'd like to get involved, so again, I mentioned it's just myself running this at the moment. If you would like to get involved, I'm happy for you to do that. What you would gain, I guess, you could share and gain information that you get from myself. Participate in group activities and projects. Reach out to professionals and spread the word about our user group and data. Network with industry professionals and peers. We will get access to exclusive events, workshops, and training sessions as well. Usually, what I do is bring people along to help me run sessions as well. And if that's something that you'd like to do as well, it's a good opportunity for you to get on board and then collaborate on some of the projects that myself and other peers might have as well. So what else is there? So as well as this, so I do training. So as I mentioned, I'm a trainer as well. So I've got public workshops coming up over the next few months as well. So if any of you are interested in any of this training, so introduction, advanced data modeling for Power BI and a dashboard design masterclass, we are running it in conjunction with Robert Walters. But if you get in touch with me, if you want to attend any of those, and then we can share the details of all that with you as well. Okay. There's also another platform, Leeds Data Platform and Cloud User Group. We've got Grace here somewhere, lovely Grace at the back there, who runs that user group. So again, this event's coming up next month, Tuesday, 11th of February. It's a double MVP speaker edition. It's a Azure Virtual 101 with Jake Walsh, and an introduction to SQL Server automation with DBA tools with Jess Pomfret as well. So again, that's just going to be across the road at Accenture, I think. There's a meetup page for that, so have a search on there for the Leeds Data Platform and Cloud User Group as well. Okay. Our next event is going to be on the 13th of Feb, so we've already got that sort of planned in. That is going to be at Accenture as well, which is just across the road on Wellington Street. Again, two fantastic speakers, networking and refreshments. So it's a date for your diary next month already, Tuesday, 13th of Feb. Day before Valentine's Day at 6 p.m. Okay, on to tonight's first speaker, Najum Khan, with some life-saving data. So Najum is a seasoned professional with a distinguished career in NHS informatics. With passion for leveraging data to improve healthcare outcomes, Najum founded iBox to address critical issue of enabling robust, timely, and accurate data to drive better clinical and operational decisions. And he's going to take us through his sort of whole timeline of what he's been doing with iBox and where it is today, and give you a demo of that and how that's helping healthcare today. Followed by Steve Campbell. So Steve is a Microsoft MVP with a deep passion for the Power BI community. He's got his own sort of company, owner of Sunny BI, and he's also the co-founder of Analytic Endeavors alongside Reed Havens that you might have seen online as well. Okay. So without further ado, so if you'd like to come up, grab your laptop.
Hi everyone. Hi. So, Najum Khan worked in healthcare informatics for the past good decade and above now. I used to work for BT in Sovereign Street, not too far away from here, in 2008. So that's when journey in data analytics and healthcare kind of started. So used to work on the national program for IT for BT and used to report on all the wonderful things they were doing in PACS and Capita and loads of other programs across the whole of the NHS. That's where it got stuck into data and working with data. That's when it really started. And then from there, I kind of just delved into specific working in hospitals in healthcare data. Show me next slide. So kind of that's where I kind of created iBox. So we've been working around healthcare, different hospitals, Barts and London Hospital, Bradford, worked a bit at Leeds and up and down the country. And I realised that at that time in 2005, I know we're in a Power BI kind of user group and Power BI experts, Power BI wasn't what it is today. So in 2015 is when I was kind of playing with open source technology. So what I kind of specialize in is open source tech. So the whole entire solution, what we're demonstrating is built in open source technology, no licensed software. So I kind of went on this kind of single crusade across healthcare thinking, do you really need to spend money on license fees? You really need to spend these costs on Oracle and the Microsoft. Can't we do something using open source technology? Because the clinical solutions are where all the data lies. So you've done the hard work in collecting all this data. Now, why are you going to pay another third party to visualize it? So I went off this kind of single crusade of getting all this technology together, created a few companies from there, but from there, brought together a few developers and created iBox. In 2015, I was playing with open data in NHS. And I was kind of visualizing open data that was available. And then from there, Hugo Matthias, who's now a good friend, was a CIO at Great Western Hospital in Swindon. And he was putting a business case together to buy Tableau at that time, I think, for the hospital. And it was just a region of £50,000. By that time, the trust was in special measures, so they couldn't sign off the business case. So we both connected on LinkedIn, and he goes, what you can do open source technology? I went, well, you don't need no one to pay Tableau or pay anyone a license fee. That £50,000 you were going to spend on license fees alone, we could probably use that to develop something in-house. So we went off and developed a few little dashboards, and it got rolling from there in 2015. Then they needed a kind of bed management solution across the whole hospital. So that's when we kind of rocked onto different things. And in terms of how the solution kind of grew from there is then he went out again, another business case, and looked at a bed management solution. And unfortunately, then at the time, we went to a big company and they were looking at millions. So you're talking about a big hospital running 1,000-bed hospital. So you're talking running to millions in terms of entire bed management solution. So again, we went, well, Hugo, you've got all the data. You've paid millions for this clinical system that collects all this data. Why are you then paying again to visualize it? Another solution. So again, he put a business case together, a few 100,000, and we developed an entire bed management solution for the whole of Great Western Hospital in Swindon. So that's kind of version number one of iBox, but kind of showed how data can be transformed, but you just need to tell the story right. If you tell the story right, the tool really is kind of the technology now, how advanced as it is kind of the secondary point. The point is about bringing the data together, understanding it, really going under the roots of the data to understand its purpose and its need and its requirement. And hopefully with any tool, you can kind of transform it and help transform an operational lead. So in terms of NHS and data saving lives, that's where kind of the data comes into it, because you kind of need to understand the story you're trying to tell with the data. And that's why it impacts operational flow and patient flow And the triangle kind of is patient safety, patient care, and patient flow. So in terms of NHS, if you kind of, in terms of healthcare overall, if you kind of hit any one of them 3 points, you kind of automatically hit the other 2 points. So if you kind of help with patient flow through a hospital, you'll naturally help with patient safety and patient care. If you kind of have a tool that looks at safety elements of a hospital, you'll naturally help with patient care, which then hopefully should trigger to patient flow, which are kind of 3 triangles, fundamentals to any healthcare kind of organization, and how data really brings everything together and saving lives. So kind of the company was founded on the principles of open source and kind of how we can bridge the gap between the current, as you probably hear in the news, these big mammoth of EPR solutions and these big mammoth of patient collecting solutions, how we can really enhance that view in terms of a control room solution. So iBox kind of lives above an EPR system and kind of bridges that gap between technology and these kind of, unfortunately, very clunky EPR solutions that are really about collecting all this data and brings it to life for operational people who are not really technically minded and don't really want to be filtering so many things, just run it straight there in terms of, right, what's happening in my hospital, what are my key pressure points, what are my risks, how do I then manage the patient flow, which will obviously enhance the patient care and patient safety. Should be next slide, please. So as I said, 2015 is when I started Great Western Hospital, and then I've kind of scaled up since then. So then Hugo moved around a few jobs, I moved around a few jobs, and we landed again in Northampton General Hospital in Swindon. So we landed there. We had paid a local company called EMIS, again, a few £1 million to implement a patient administration system in the hospital. Project managed that, got that in. But then again, it was the same scenario, but we need the data on the wards. We need the data for clinicians to be able to enter it in quick and easy. So typically in the hospital, you'd see on wards, they'll have this big screen where you might walk in, or a big whiteboard it used to be. So you'd walk in and say, what bed is Najum Khan on? Right, he's on bed 4, bed 5, and you'll see it on the manual whiteboard. So you'll see a lot of them digitized now over time. So what we had done then in 2018, we designed that in iBox in terms of fully digital. So as you walk on the ward now, you've got a full big 65-inch touchscreen TV where you can see all the data. So we're pulling it from the PAS system in real time, pulling it from the electronic observation system in real time, and you can see all the information now on a digital screen. What we did, we took it to another level in terms of it's a touch screen, so you can touch it and enter data. So that was version 2 of iBox, right? Now let's start entering a bit of data on the board round, because that's where the clinicians and nurses and doctors are. That's where they can use your data from all these different clinical systems and really act in terms of helping the patient and patient flow, which again, helps enhance the whole hospital efficiency. In terms of data saving lives, so as we was going around with all the electronic whiteboards and doing all this integration, there was a patient safety team look after critical care. So your critical care team and your critical care ward are very crucial in any hospital. They kind of where you manage a patient one-to-one care. So in normal general wards, you might have one nurse to 4 patients, but in critical care normally it's 2 or 3 nurses to a patient. It's a very high workforce and therefore very expensive. So if you think about Leeds Teaching Hospital, their budget probably last year would have been about 1.3 billion. Of that, I'd say about 70 to 80% would be workforce. So you're talking about 900 million just on workforce alone. So that's where the efficiencies and productivity numbers are coming out today, is that if you were to save 1 or 2% of that productivity efficiency, you'd save millions. So hence why you need to look at your most high workforce areas, critical care being one of them. So we worked with Dr. Jonathan Hardwick and we created a deteriorating patient module, which was really core in terms of the functionality of saving lives. So what the system did was it would pick up if you were an early warning score of 5 and above and you were tripping over. And then what would do, automatically trigger an alert to the CCO team, the critical care outreach team, who would then use that view to go treat the patient. And they would have an hour. Before, when it was paper, it was 72 hours. So in 72 hours, they have to go treat this patient. But since we've been running since 2019, we've got that down to 6 hours and even down to 4 hours in some cases. And it's proven over the time. There's a national indicator called HMSR, the Hospital Statistical Mortality Rate. So look at your mortalities over 1,000 admissions. And we'd seen over 2019-22 that dropping just purely because of the inclusion of iBox in terms of it naturally alerts the doctors to what they need to do on the ward. From the ward, the doctors know what they have to do. They know the time frame they have to do it. They're completing the time frame. It's the most sickest patient in the hospital who's deteriorating, and therefore the outcome of the patient's bettered, and it showed an increase in outcome of the patient. We won a HSJ award for it as well, so it was really well received. Again, me doing all this in open source technology, kind of, for me, it was trying to showcase to others that look, you can do some sophisticated things in open source tech. You don't really have to buy a license, tool, and solution. But then on the flip side, obviously, you got NHS England, who just signed probably a £340 million contract with Microsoft. You have every hospital with Power BI. You have every hospital with the Windows infrastructure. So for them to take on an open source solution, it's kind of goes against the grain of what they've just invested millions in. So again, it was an amazing idea for me since 2015 to now. It's been a very tough battle to get into the hospitals I've got into. But as you can imagine, signing all these Microsoft contracts, and now, you know, Mr. Donald Trump giving a $500 billion award of AI to Oracle and other major platforms, it makes it even more difficult for open source. But just showcase that you can do something if you put your mind to it. You don't really need to use Microsoft and Oracle and the big boys to do it. So that really was the crux of the solution. And now we're flipping to command and control. So now what we're doing is taking all this data, realizing that, all right, that NHS England is giving these 30-40 million pound contracts, these big EPR companies. Hopefully there's no one from Cerner here, but like Cerner and Oracle, these big companies. And what they're not doing well is visualizing the data. So what you need to do from a command and control point of view is every hospital have this problem. When you always hear A&E is breaking, like, so we know at Leeds, wonderful teaching hospital, A&E is always under pressure. It's always A&E, 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 but that's such a front door to a system. The system is more than just A&E. The system is A&E with the inpatient beds for medical and surgical, your theatres, your radiology, your pathology, and then your discharging, and then your social care at the end of it. So if any part of that system is broken, your front door is the one that gets hit hardest, because obviously now these patients are rocking up to A&E. So now it's after hours, GPs are closed. Where are you going to go? A&E. A&E gets hammered with all this work out of hours, and therefore, because social care is closed at that end, it blocks up the whole system. So as well as A&E might get hammered in terms of what it's doing, it is part of the system. So the control room solution then will sit above the whole artery in hospital to indicate to execs as to where the problems are, not just A&E, but problems are, you've got medical patients who, someone who shouldn't be in the hospital can be discharged safely and securely. Why don't we discharge? Why don't you focus on them patients rather than focus on the front door all the time? Because our workforce is split across the whole system. So that's what we're moving towards in terms of a command and control piece. Should be next slide. So yeah, as we've gone over the deteriorating patient module, so it kind of utilizes all them core elements of an early warning score. So you'll have early warning scores set in a hospital. So nurses might come up to you. Hopefully none of us see this situation, but you get early warning score in terms of your blood pressure, your saturation rate, these kind of metrics, and they determine your early warning score. So when you trip over 5 early warning scores, so between 5 and 7, you're pretty risky. 7 and above, you're very risky. 7 to 12 is very, very sick. So in terms of tripping over them scores, that's what we kind of measure. And the EOB systems kind of, unfortunately, many hospitals stand alone. So you have nurses use this EOB system where patients are tripping over, but then you have a totally different system used for critical care. So they don't see that until a phone call is made or an email is made or some other form of communication between the teams is made in order to trigger that event for someone from an outreach team to go view the patient. So we kind of automated all that piece in terms of brought it all together in terms of triggering the event automatically, a list ending up on CCO team's list to do, and then them acting upon it. So hopefully in the demo I can show you that in a bit more detail. Yeah, and as I said, we got recognised at the HSJ Awards in 2022. The patient safety manager for Charlotte Hudler, she did a good detailed study on the impacts of the HMSR score across Northampton General Hospital, and showed that we had no serious incidents for that time. It showed that we really brought down the rate of death and rate of outcome for patients in the hospital. So it really showed how a clinical team who have an idea, who come together with an agile way of working in terms of open source technology can really deliver a powerful solution. And that's what I think at the minute we're kind of missing a lot of these healthcare hospitals. You're getting big juggernaut EPRs coming in, but and now you've got a contract given, I heard, £35 million to KPMG to help go refine the usage of the EPR solutions. So kind of, for me, I'm thinking, you just paid £40 million for a solution. Now you're paying another consultant to go around to refine the solution. And then you're still in this kind of bad position where you still got these A&E front door problems. It's kind of, it can't always be the people. You have to look at the underlying technology. Is it really built for the right reasons? Because obviously Cerner and Oracle and these companies, when they built these EPRs, they were building systems. That's how American model works. They're all billing systems. So when they come over here, we're a more care system, not a billing system. The billing comes at the end of it. Hence why they've tried to shoehorn the wrong system into a different care model. And obviously, everything in the healthcare world in America make sure that they get every penny out of you for every single point. Whereas here, the money really comes at the end of it, and it's really a block contract, so it works kind of very differently. So hence why I'm finding a lot of hospitals now still having spent millions on these EPR solutions, still in that point where they can't push forward with this control room solution, because now, let's say Cerner now have charged £40 million for a solution. Sorry to pick on Cerner, but it's just been in the news a lot with Sheffield signing a 10-year contract as well. Then you're not going to pay furthermore millions to have a control room solution. You're just going to unfortunately have to manage the spreadsheets or the Power BI dashboards, anything you've got of that solution, and just focus on the EPR because you spent all your capital money on it. So hence why we're getting in a position where now hospitals are kind of looking at alternatives to the bigger players, and hence why it's generating some interesting conversations, especially with iBox and across other healthcare companies. Next slide. So we'll move on to the demo. Yeah. So this is iBox. So this is version 4. It's just gone through quite a few design iterations and quite a few changes over time. But this is the latest version. That's thankfully across 4 hospitals that make it down south mainly. For some reason, I can't get into Leeds because they're too big and it's very hard and very political to get into. So I've got into 4 hospitals down south: Kettering, Northampton in the East Midlands. So do a lot of M1 travelling. But that's where kind of predominantly based, and kind of it helps run the hospital end to end. So if you look at the A&E life status dashboard, so I'll start with the front door, because that's obviously the one that's up 24/7. So if you look at this kind of dashboard, it kind of brings together. It's very busy in terms of, so for non-healthcare kind of operational people, yeah, it'll come across really busy. But for those who understand what they need in terms of one place, it gives a hospital operational ED manager everything they need in one place. So the core elements is this triangle, for example, covers core safety elements. So if you know your ceiling of care, so for example, Leeds Teaching Hospital, their ceiling of care in A&E might be 40 patients. So i.e. they've got 40 cubicles, that's all they can hold. As soon as they go over 40 patients in corridor, you'll have corridor care, ambulance will be queuing up, they know that's it, breach. So you know they're at max capacity. So knowing how many patients are in your department, again, is very important. Then you'd know that the triage time within 15 minutes. So again, you'd know if I'm busy at max capacity, my nurses do not have the right time to go triage every patient coming in. And if I miss one triage with someone with a complex care, unfortunately, it's happened in hospitals. Someone could be sitting on the seat, not having been triaged right, unfortunately could pass away or be in a worse position than they were when they came into A&E. Again, we're finding that with people coming in with multiple comorbidities. And then your decision to admit. So again, in the A&E department, once I've been assessed, doctor says, right, Najum Khan, he needs a bed. He's a DTA now, but I'm sat in A&E, but I can't move on through the system, as I explained, because all the inpatient beds are taken in the hospital. So therefore, I'm sat in A&E, so I'm in the wrong place at the wrong time, therefore won't be getting the right level of care. Again, my patient will deteriorate because he should be in the inpatient ward being seen by different consultants and nurses, but he's stuck in A&E because, again, the system is blocked. So again, that shows to me that I've got patients in the department who shouldn't be in the department. I've got patients in the department who can't triage correctly, and I'm at max capacity, meaning I'm at breaking point. So that kind of gives you the whole kind of picture in one key nice little triangle. And again, the Opal status is a national operation framework that escalation levels. So if you're Opal 3 or 4, you're really in a bad state, and the whole hospital needs to know. So again with technology, it kind of comes easy. So as you've got all these 65-inch touchscreens across the whole Northampton hospital, anytime they trigger a different Opal score, it flags up across all them screens. So again, there's no need for someone to email around saying we're in Opal 3, because it triggers different operational statuses by the nurses on the hospital. If they know you're in Opal 4, what they would do is anyone deemed to be low risk, they will push them out the door, basically discharge them straight away. So different operation procedures come into play. But again, if it's waiting on a senior nurse on a ward to see that email, to know they have to go to Opal 4, again, it's that means of communication from technology that, again, is just seamless to me. But again, the major EPRs can't do it, and it kind of just baffles me as to why then they win so many contracts. But that's a discussion for another day. And then obviously, so if we start across the top in terms of core metrics, so we all hear the 4-hour breach standard, you all hear it in the news in terms of 4-hour breach. So we give it to them in real time so they can start to understand the 4-hour breaches. But we split it admitted and non-admitted. So that implies that if Najum walked into your department and was due a bed, he was due to be admitted, and he breaches the 4-hour, it means it could be a system problem. Where if Najum Khan came into A&E, but he was seen within the right quiet time and discharged home, yeah, he was a non-admitted patient seen within the required time, implying that the A&E is staffed and working correctly. It's just the system down the line is broken. So we kind of give them core metrics broken down again by department, and then all your patients in department split by different timing bands. So obviously the 4-hour line is the most important national standard that everyone drives in A&E, and that gives it to them there. So again, from an operational point of view, from here you can see everything you need to see to understand the pressure on the department, what I need to act on and how I need to do so. You've got to think about hospital and the hierarchy from execs to non-execs to senior management to ED management to clinicians. So you've got a lot of very different people looking at this information in a different light in order to make a decision, because now someone has to decide, do I take my consultants off the ward to come to A&E to alleviate the pressures there, but then I'm going to build up some pressure there. Someone has to make that fundamental workforce decision. Like I explained, the biggest cost is workforce, and the most people I've got to move someone around to a different place to alleviate the pressure, and alleviate pressure or treating patients, because obviously someone could be at high risk of unfortunate, fatality. So therefore, it's a very complex decision with many variables, and you just have to keep an eye on it in kind of different light. And again, you can't always train everyone on every single visualization and view with filters. As you can see, there's not one filter on that dashboard. So any exec or any non-exec who doesn't always look at it will look at it straight away and understand the core metrics they need to know, because they'll hear them every day and they don't want to have to filter something to see something different. They just want it, straight there in their face so they can help make an informed decision. Then when I talk about workforce and tweaking, so we did one that does hour by hour. So we kind of look, all right, we know your core hours are between 8 and 6, and that's when you're kind of the most busiest. But if you tweak your workforce, what happens? So we start to look at historical data and start to say, right, let's really go in on the data and let's go down hour by hour. So we go to a lot of the different things like internal professional standards. So we triage in 15 minutes. I had 6 nurses on today, but yet my triage in 15 minutes is still not happening on time. What are the reasons for it? So it gives you everything hour by hour in terms of drilling down to core metrics to give you that view of perception of A&E, and it gives you that deep dive so someone can analyze. We had a serious incident yesterday at 4 o'clock. We had a patient, unfortunately, a fatality in A&E. What happened at 4 o'clock? Well, we were really busy. As you can see, there were 72 patients in the department. We have a capacity of 60 patients, so clearly we were way above our capacity, and hence what tripped over into a serious incident. Then we can do some predictive analytics as well. So we've plugged in some bit of Python coding as everyone is now. We kind of do some predictive analytics on ambulance arrivals, because as we know in A&E, if you arrive by ambulance, you're more sick than someone walking in. So the chance of you being admitted is probably 8 times higher than someone who walks into the department. Someone who walks in normally is okay, but they've made a choice to walk into you because they couldn't get access to the care somewhere else. Whereas someone who comes in the ambulance, they made that concentration to ring 999, meaning their acuity is a lot higher, meaning the chance of them being admitted, the chance of them needing a bed, the chance of them needing more care, being in them resus and major areas is a lot higher. So hence why everyone talks about ambulance queuing, because it's really important, because someone queuing the ambulance outside, unfortunately, there's a fatality. You can imagine, obviously, the uproar that's going to happen in terms of the patient wasn't seen in the right place at the right time, meaning that the chance of fatality increases higher. So again, it's one that really highlights the data, and you'd see the queues and stacks. So it'd be abnormal to see a lot of ambulances at 2 o'clock in the morning, but then you have to understand the system, how it works. The reason why you might see that is because primary care is closed, out of hours is closed, every other option is closed. It leaves the person with no choice but to ring 999. And unfortunately, that's what happens in a lot of areas and up and down the country. In East England, especially down south, we find it a lot that because GPs, again, close pretty early, 999 seems to be the only last resort. And unfortunately, it puts a lot of pressure on the whole system. And again, this is why people are kicking off about social care funding a lot more than they are. And you see it. But again, the data shows it in highlights. So again, for me, it's kind of straightforward. I don't know why I'm so simple about it, but I don't know why other people just don't get it and just don't understand that we do have a GP crisis, and it kind of is shown it in the data. But again, that's political. Let's not go into that. And then again, it's just a showcase that we can do different things with data. So we've got Sankey here that kind of shows the flow from coming into hospital to out. So again, data quality is a big thing with the data. It's all good, everyone hammering it in, but it's about, right, why have I got a lot of others here? So why do I have a lot of others in location? I don't have locations map, I have others in my clinical system. So what are these others? So again, it allows someone to deep dive and dig into the data just by simple clicks. So again, it's, you've got healthcare senior management really busy and don't have time to really digest, and will never remember where all these dashboards are, where it be Tableau, SSRS, whatever they are. And there's no way for them to remember where they all are, unfortunately. They'll always end up ringing an analyst or ringing the IT team saying, right, I need to know this. Where is it? Oh, it was on that dashboard you asked me for last week. Right, totally forgot, because there's just so much pressure. So again, we're trying to think of different views to give them so they can just drill through the data themselves, rather having to more self-service. With AI, it'll get a lot better and a lot different. But again, kind of self-service tools to give them that way of doing it. And then if we come back to the wonderful inpatient module, and this is kind of a typical bed board that we've created across the ward. So again, this is leading to inpatient. So this kind of sits up on a big screen on every ward, and they can it's a touch screen, so they can touch and enter data. So this is where kind of, iBox took to a different light in 2018 before all these EPR contracts. So therefore, Northampton had that problem. They wanted to enter data on the boards. They wanted the consultants around it. They didn't want people to go away to enter the data in else places. So again, I thought, to me, it was kind of simple. I went, I could knock you up an entire bed board. I can have all your pathways on it, have your tasks to be done. So I went a bit too far. So this was when I was going into EPR territory, when everyone was like, what are you doing? I went, but this is how simple it is to create an EPR, come up your paper up. And then I obviously got really political. That's when I realized I've gone too far. Or is it they've not gone far enough? I don't know. So I did this in 2018, and this has been absolutely running on open source across Northampton Hospital. In Touchwood, I've had it fail. You have blackouts and you have issues, but nothing major. And it runs the whole hospital into one, happy as Larry. So I don't understand, to me, why are we paying 40-50 million to all these big companies? I understand the risk, and they've got some, check boxes of ISO 2007 and all these wonderful things that I don't have. But to me, technology, it works. As long as you build it right, it works well. So this shows a case that you can pull in all the tasks. And as I explained about deteriorating patients, so what you can do with the nurse concern click, so you can do one little click on the nurse concern tile, and it automatically assigns all the 12 tasks, 13 tasks. So we designed it with the patient safety officers in the hospital. It gives them 12 tasks. We highlight them in clear purple, so there's no excuses to ever miss them. And it timestamps everything, so we know when they were logged, when they were created, who completed them, why they completed them, any commentary they add to it. So we kind of bring all that together here. And then what we do is through a nice little virtual ward, we've got all the deteriorating patients listed down here. So anyone that gets flagged on here, then you can see them on a nice list. So again, within the hospital, you've got so many different teams. You've got a frailty team, you've got a speech and language therapy team, you've got, a critical care team. You've got so many different teams looking after different patients for different reasons. So there's so much overlap between different people and different patients. So hence why we coined the same virtual ward. So what I did was, no matter who triggers where, you'll see them on your list. So naturally, the team now have got a list of work. They know the work they have to do. They've got all the groups. They know who to step down. They know who to discharge from the level of care. And just having it in one place for them just made it a lot easier for them to work with, rather than getting phone calls from several different wards at the same time. So it meant that they could just look down one list. They can see all the observations here done. So again, we've got ETLs that pull data from the OBS system in real time, and as well as the inpatient system in real time. So again, they can see all the OBS lined up to the system. And that's another thing with current EPRs. You have to log into so many different screens to get to the right thing that you need. So kind of, I seen that problem in Northampton. There was a different supplier for the EOB systems, a different supplier for the PAS system, different supplier for the theatre system, different supplier for the A&E system. I was kind of like, how can anyone remember these 4, 5, 6 different passwords? We all struggle, but we all save passwords now on our own laptops. But in NHS, you can't do that, can you? So you can't save all the passwords, unfortunately, in governance. So you have to remember them all. Then, so what does someone do? Has the same password for everything. And then so you breach every information governance rule there is in the hospital. But again, it's kind of like, the data is there. You've done all the hard work. Why not just pull it to one place for you? So you can see it when you need to act. So you've got the data here and you can act upon it. So it gives them that full view in terms of deteriorating patient, and it gives them a whole host of different analytics and views in terms of what they can see and what they can't see. So it really goes into a lot of detail in terms of managing patient care end to end. So as you can see, from a control room point of view, is the core elements you'd want to manage is from A&E to inpatient wards, then within the inpatient wards, all your most sickest patients, and then from there flowing out to your discharge tracker, which manages all the patients who are due to go home. So again, from a system point of view, in high level and control room solution, kind of built it. Also, you'd see something similar to it if you've been to Bradford Teaching Hospital. They've got a GE Command and Control Centre. Again, let's not quote the cost of it, but yeah, it's there. It's built by GE, so you can imagine the cost of it. It does. So again, I've done the same thing at Northampton, and it kind of blows my mind as to NHS England. Hello, we've kind of done it here for peanuts. You're paying, let's not say how many zeros there. Can't we just work together on something? But as I said, them signing a £340 million Microsoft contract, they have to make it work, don't they? So they have to unfortunately use it. So it's there and it's done. It's all open source and it's wonderful. I think I was pretty quick there. Yeah, it's 10-15 minutes. Anyone's got any questions, more than happy to take them, or more than happy to extend it anywhere if you want me to. Go on, sir.
Yeah, a lot of questions. It's really interesting. But the main one, you started off first, the demo was kind of showing analytics, if you like, which we're used to seeing maybe with a data warehouse that's historic data or overnight loading, which is quite different from your command and control. It's very,
Correct.
very real time. I just wondered, are they two separate entities in your system, or are they? What's your architecture that allows all that?
Yeah, so the architecture, so the typical WAMP stuff are Windows, Apache, MySQL, PHP. And then so within that, there's a community version of a tool called Pentaho. So Pentaho is basically an SSIS, is an integration between and pulling data out. So Pentaho community version, it's owned by Hitachi, so it's kind of very well supported and huge. So we pull real-time feeds using Pentaho in terms of that. But we also, you're right, in terms of have overnight jobs that store the data in the MySQL database. So we cover both elements. So like you were saying, the real-time view in terms of A&E, we can show all that as well as the analytics going historical. So we cover both. And it's kind of seamless. Again, MySQL is as big as Microsoft SQL Server. It can do everything it can do. Just it's MySQL. It's owned by Oracle. It's a community version, going nowhere. And again, so both of them seamlessly do everything we need to do. And we hold both. And again, we've shown so the Windows server that we use in Northampton General Hospital, it's on-prem, it's on their server, they control infrastructure. It's an almost tiny Windows server, whereas Camis, the EMI system, has got 6 of them servers just to run their PAS system. And the functionality is pretty much, overlaps a lot. So we've shown that through web technology. Again, the infrastructure you need isn't as heavy as you would need to cover some things like that. Any other questions? More than happy to. Team, so again, being open source and being lightweight, we've got a team of 6 of us. You don't need a lot of people. We're agile, very small, but again, we just turn our hands to it quick. And it being all open source, it allows us to, again, you can do it nowadays. Microsoft Power BI and other things, again, they're pretty quick. You've got a lot of user dragged up, but the community being so big out there, you got to think about PHP probably runs about 70% of the internet right now. 70% of websites, they're all using PHP. Everyone in the background uses MySQL. It's huge. It's owned by Oracle. It's as big as Microsoft. So the communities out there are very big in terms of these technologies. It's used in the back end of many applications you probably use day in, day out. So again, changing stuff around is pretty seamless. And again, technology, I've got a few people based in Leeds, a few outsourced, and that's it. We just knocked it out. So a few of us kept the team light, small, agile. Hopefully if we land 20, 30, 40 hospitals, it might change. But for now, the 4 or 5 that money is more than sufficient. Yeah, so as you know, a small company, so I do account management, design. I was on Doncaster yesterday. I'll be in Georgia next week doing account management. I do incident management. I look at the faults and problems. Again, my background is more data and analytics, so I'll be looking at the data and background and kind of turning that into a design. So I do have a designer in India, but he's a pure designer, as in he can draw what I ask him to draw, nothing more than that. So again, healthcare, working on the ground. So I've worked inside hospitals and worked with them all day. So like I said, it's in Doncaster. So I do a lot of consulting with hospitals to help them kind of get the best out of the analytics they've got on the side of it. So I know kind of what is good and what isn't bad. So again, all the design work here, I've done a lot of it myself, a lot of the research myself and followed it myself. So yeah.
Yeah, I was wondering, do you have a sort of vision or an idea of other things you want to develop with this, or other settings you want to use it? Maybe like other social care, is it all always going to be focused on health, like elderly social care settings, or other areas like that?
So my background is acute hospital, so I've mainly worked in acute hospital. So the healthcare system I was saying before is very big. So social care, have got a system called Rio, what they normally use. It kind of covers different use cases, whereas I kind of more focus in hospitals because I just know them inside out, because that's where your biggest expenses are. So if you look at Leeds, you know, like I say, 1.3 billion would have been their budget, I think, probably last year, whereas social care for the whole of Leeds might even be a fraction of that. So unfortunately, the money is with hospitals, hence why you see on the multi-million. But that's where just I've landed in. And in terms of the future, yeah, I see AI transforming the entire visual space. I'm already playing with a few tools, and I've seen some amazing dictation solutions out there already. And Oracle have already announced the entire EPR is going to be kind of AI driven. Again, it's going to be fascinating. But AI in terms of, especially when look at what co-pilots go, Microsoft is, like I said, Microsoft have got a contract with every single hospital in some way, shape, or form. They're in there. So if you've got co-pilot where you can just, instead of a service senior manager having to go to an analyst and say, can you tell me how many referrals I yesterday? If you can type to co-pilot, it tells you it. That's the future, isn't it? That's entire self-service of AI. And if you look at all the real-time analytics I've done here, technically an AI engine should be able to do that if you structure it right. The key thing would be if you structure it right. That's going to be the dilemma, is who's going to build that structure, like we have queues with SSAS and everything. Who's going to build that structure right in the right way for the AI to then go off and understand the difference between a 4-hour performance in healthcare versus the sales of a company. So everyone in the AI world talks of sales of a company and revenue. These are whole generic terms, but in healthcare, you've got none of that. You've got RTT and waiting lists. You've got a different type of waiting list. You've got a different type of patient tracking lists. You've got so many acronyms in healthcare. Someone has to train them LLMs on that. So that's going to be the challenge. Who can get to there first to make them LLMs really relevant with an AI kind of Gen AI on top of it? Then it'll be going to the next level. But again, that's pretty far away. In healthcare, it'll be easier to do it in other sectors because the data is more generic in terms of revenue, cost, turnover, inventory, whereas healthcare is really, really specific. And to get access to it, unfortunately, you've got so much red tape to get through. Yeah, I can see that being the barrier. So that's what happens in health. That's why it's always 5 or 10 years behind. Just the red tape to get in. It just takes so long for small companies to get even close to it. That's why Oracle and the big boys, they've got them people in there to take their time on that red tape because they've got millions, whereas I can't wait for that red tape. I just need to, unfortunately, then actually point all my expertise at some other sector because it's just faster and easier. So that's why, unfortunately, it kills off smaller companies doing stuff and doing innovative stuff. But I'm still there battling away hard, so wish me luck. Sorry.
In the data warehouse or from data, we kind of have to do a lot of data quality checks and data validation. Because I used to work with some NHS clients back in the day, I used to work with one of those bad guys. And as you said, they have lots of systems, right? They do lots of things. A lot of them are quite archaic. And we found that they generally have quite poor data validation of those systems, and so the quality of that data is not necessarily reliable. Is that something that you do before you present it back?
Yeah, so what we do is, so as you can see, a lot of data entry happening in iBox. Data quality is the biggest problem in healthcare, and this problem around it is that it's probably a problem in every single sector, but it's more so in healthcare because in a private company, data quality will be higher because you got senior management whose jobs are relying on it, and they'll be kicking down the change to get it done. Whereas in healthcare, you've got clinicians and so many different teams doing so many different things to a patient that when it comes to data quality, it's kind of whose responsibility is it? Is it the doctors to put that task in? No, I thought the nurses put that task in. Is the doctor update the drugs? No, I thought it was the pharmacist to update drugs. So that's a problem in healthcare. The accountability structure is so like a mesh. It's hard to pinpoint whose ultimate responsibility on data quality, and everyone will always have an excuse as to why it's not theirs. So yeah, data quality in healthcare is bad. It's getting better, and hence why these EPRs should enhance that, because technically they're just mopping up all that paper into a digital form, and hopefully they should be able to put rules around there that if you don't do this, you can't access this, and then the patient can't do this. So hopefully that shall enhance all that. But yeah, you're right, that is one of the biggest problems at the minute, with a lot of paper still knocking around. Even though after these hospitals, I've still got, so I was at a Royal Free doing a consultancy piece on patient flow. Even though they've got certain EPR, they still have a manual whiteboard where that doctor writes something on there because he's just not happy having to log into that system to type it. He'll write on that board and expect a registrar, someone else, to take it off that board and type it into the EPR. Now, again, transcribing is 6 to a 9, is 1 to an 8, is 7 to a 1. The registrar types it in there, but again, who knows what they're typing in there. So again, yeah, data completeness might be high, data accuracy low. So you've got them problems to counter as well. Thank you.
All right. Good evening, everyone. So this is going to be quite different to the last presentation, I think. we're going to talk about DAX filter context. Just before I get in, maybe show of hands, who would say they're an expert at DAX? Well, okay. What about probably an intermediate? Half, and then a beginner? Okay, or never used DAX before? Okay. This is going to be quite an interesting 45 minutes to an hour for you guys, I'll be honest. And hopefully this won't scare you away from DAX completely. Okay, let's get then. So just before we get in, a bit about myself. My name's Steve Campbell. So I'm a Microsoft MVP in data platform. So primarily I do Power BI mostly. Sunny BI, which is a training company here, but also co-owner of Analytic Endeavors, which is my consulting firm based in the States, actually, with my business partner, Reed Havens. He's very, very good as well. You see him on YouTube quite a lot. We do data platform implementation stuff. But normally I like to talk on Power BI and I train in Power BI, and it's what I like to chat about the most. Definitely have me on LinkedIn as well. If you find this interesting, I do a lot on LinkedIn and I'd love to connect. And if you ever want any questions, message me on LinkedIn. Okay, so the objectives of today in this session. DAX is scary to a lot of people, I'll say that. And it can be quite difficult. And it feels like it really ages you working in it. If you've ever worked in DAX, sometimes it can get quite hard. And there's a few things that we really need to do and understand that is important to get through and understand how DAX works. So this is going to be much more theoretical. It's about 80% slides. There's actually going to be very little coding in it, which hopefully is a nice thing. These are kind of the key things we're going to go through. So we're going to talk about filter context, but in order to understand that, we're going to go through a few more things. Being sort of expanded tables is going to be a key thing. And this is all how DAX works underneath the surface. Okay, so let's get into it. So what is filter context? So filter context is any filters that are applied to the measure. That's it. Joking, of course, but pretty much that is it. That is what we mean by filter context. It is simple. You have a DAX measure. There's going to be filters, right? In Power BI, we have numbers that we do things like sum, average, and we filter it in different ways. That's what graphs are. That's what everything is. The thing is, though, is how we can actually manipulate this filter context and add filters and remove filters to get more meaningful numbers. So all measures, you'll always have filter context, right? Because any DAX you write, you can put on a canvas, you can always filter it. And filter context can come from three places. Inside the DAX statement, so you can apply filters from writing your DAX, and you can apply a filter to that measure directly. Anything else on the page? So slices, other visuals, obviously Power BI is really nice and interactive. But then also within the visual you're doing. So if you look at a table, right, you have different rows. These are just applying filters to your measure in different ways. A graph is the same thing. All graphs can be represented underneath by a table. So if we have a graph like this can always be represented by a table. Graphs in Power BI are just basically drawings, I like to think of them, of tables of data. So I always think when I'm talking about DAX, I always go back to tables. Because even a map, if you think about a map visual, it's just an X value and a Y value that they plot on an XY, and they just put a picture behind it, basically. So everything can be a table. And really tables are just the numeric values beneath, right? So Power BI has got this abstraction. So I always like to start here. Whenever I'm testing DAX, building DAX, let's do it in tables, because all the graphs are just going to be drops of this anyway. And again, as I said before, what we have is these are all filters, right? So you can see the owner, whether it's Kate or Sunny, the store on the axis, this is all filters. And again, obviously, this is clearly a filter. And then you have values. So this is just summing the same value up in filtered by different place. So filter context. Let's have a look at this first DAX statement. So what I like to do when explaining filter context here is you look at the three areas of where the filter context can come from. And we're going to start easy, and by the end of this, we're going to get some pretty complicated, and I'll probably lose some of you at the very end, don't worry. So we'll ramp up to the end, but we want to start nice and simple. So what is the filter context here? Well, we have from within the DAX visual. So we can say that the date is going to be this date. And I do apologize. I lived in America for almost 10 years. So often I write dates American style. And you'll see a lot of American dates I do, and you'll hear me pronounce things wrong and say the letter Z all the time. So if you see that, it's because I live there. I'm trying to shake it as much as I can, don't I? Second one is obviously we have filters from outside the visual. So we can say there's two filters on this number here, and when we're saying specifically this value, because even if you have the same measure, where you use it in different parts of the page, it will have different types of filter context. Again, for this number 45, inside the DAX, outside the visual, and inside the visual, right? And so there's three. We have the exercise table and date, the zoo name, and the animal. And this data set, if you hadn't guessed, it's a made up zoos that we feed our animals and we take them on exercise and we track it. The next one, we have the same measure again, obviously, with three different types of filter context here. So in this one, the only difference here is obviously that last one from inside the visual. And this is a really important point. It can sound quite simple, but it's good to remember this, right? The aggregation here is just the sum of the minutes exercised. And then everything else, we're just applying filter context in different ways to filter this. So let's start getting into some theory now. Let's start getting some complicated. Who's heard of expanded tables in SQL? In DAX. In DAX. Okay. So expanded tables is a key concept. I'll be honest, this is, hopefully I explain it and you'll understand it to some degree today. It's one if you really want to go DAX, you will probably have to refresh, maybe do a bit more learning. And my aim today is really just to kind of give you that basics and understanding on what it is and how it works. It's not a simple context, a simple task that you'll understand in one session, but we can probably introduce it today. And if you want to learn DAX and you want to get really good at DAX, this is one of the key ones to learn. Where I would definitely start. So let's have a look at some tables. We have our data here. So we have animals, and we've tracked on the date that they were exercised. We tracked how much exercise they had. Obviously, we have two-dimensional tables here. We have our animal table, which just says what type of animals we have in our zoo. Looks like a gorilla, a cow, a turtle, and a crocodile. And then we have obviously a date table. Looks like this, very simple, nice star schema. The other half of this, and you'll get, is that we always should be doing star schema. And I think if you're looking this, you'll see why you need to do star schema whenever you're writing this. So what happens when we write in DAX? DAX works on expanded tables. And a lot of this is very, it's done in the computer. So this is already ways to conceptualize this in our minds and visualize it. It may work slightly different, underneath the surface, but this is sort of a visual explanation of what's going on inside the DAX engine. So what an expanded table is if you're from SQL, I like to think of this as like a left join. If you're from an Excel background, I think of this as a VLOOKUP. What it does underneath the surface is it basically creates one big fact table. So it would start in the fact table, and it knows it's the fact table because it works on one-to-many relationships. So it start at the many side. And you'll see why if you have many-to-many relationships, this doesn't happen and your DAX comes really, really hard. So another reason to avoid them. So this is assuming that we have a correct star schema. It will then obviously look up number 1's gorilla. We gave here, and then also number 2's cow, Barry the cow, and then Pete the crocodile. And then same thing with the date. So obviously the date's joined on this key, and it creates this flattened table. So although we go through all this effort to make dims and facts and create a star schema, when we do the DAX internally, it basically flattens it out like this, in order to do its calculations. So when we look at expanded tables, we can say that we have exercise date, we have this, and the animal. We can say the filter context on this. We have 2 filter contexts, the date and the animal, and then the aggregation is going to be the sum of the minutes exercise. Because obviously there's always some sort of aggregation. You want to normally sum or average something like that. So what happens in this case is that we're going to always do this on the expanded table. So Power BI, underneath the surface, builds the expanded table. It then says, and you'll see here, I'm using in this case the date column directly from the fact table. And that's, you normally would do it from the dimension, but I'm doing this to kind of show you internally how this works. And then the animals, which was, crocodile or cow, because that came from the filter. What it would do then is it builds its expanded table, it flattens it out, and it's going to filter on both the date and the animal column of this expanded table. Then it's simply going to sum everything that's left in this column. And that is how underneath the surface it works. And we'll see why this is really, really important as we go. So one thing else we can do with filter context. Any questions on this? I know this is quite theoretical, and especially if you're new at DAX, this might be a lot, but any questions so far? Yeah.
So for the expanded table, yeah, personally, I know it as denormalized table.
Yeah.
Then, so is it suitable for large data? Because I'm thinking that we normalize tables because we probably have large data.
The data size, this is really an internal thing. So when it's doing this calculation, it's not going to physically make this or store this table anywhere. But in order to do this calculation, this is what it's doing underneath the surface. Essentially, it's building out this table, and it's just an optimization thing, really internally, and how the DAX thing works. When you build the tables, you definitely don't want to store it like this. You want to do dims and facts like that. So let's look now at ways we can look at this context filter and how we can actually manipulate the context filter. And you'll see, that's what we want to do. We want to often change the context filter and the filters applied in order to get certain numbers. One thing we want to do is remove filters. This is a really, really common thing to do. For example, if you want to get a percentage, so maybe I'm looking at sales on Wednesday, but then I will also want to divide that by the total sales. So in order to get that total number, we need to say, hey, I want to remove some filters, and we'll go through an example. So let's say we had this, right? So we have filter context, and what we've done is we've just said we're doing the total exercise. We've put 2 slices on the page. So our measure is just the sum of the total exercise. And then we have two slices on the page. One is saying that the date is Sunday, and one is saying that the animals are these 2 animals. Internally, it's saying, well, I know you're going to build off the exercise table, so I'm going to build out the expanded table. I'm going to build this exercise and join in all these other tables that I'm using. Again, it filters by the animals and the day, and it's going to return just this one line. What we can do is we can say, we can use this calculate function. Has anyone not used calculate before? We all can, a couple. Okay. I'm not going to go into calculate too much, but it calculates that the mother of all functions that says we can change how these filters work. So on our page, we've said we're filtering by Sunday, we're filtering gorilla and cow. I can add in my calculate statement, so I'm going to say calculate, and now I'm referring to a measure of total exercise. So this is just the sum of the total exercise. And I've said remove the filters of the day-to-day column. What this does is it says, I built out my expanded table. I know that we want to have the day is Sunday and the animal is gorilla or cow. By adding in this remove filters line, what it's saying is if there's any filters on this column, surprisingly, remove them. So what it's going to do is it's not going to look at this one because that's on the column that we're saying remove the filters on. So it's going to ignore the filter from the slice. And then it's only going to filter for the other one, animal cow. There's no remove filters on this column. So it says, okay, we can apply that filter. This is really, really powerful when you want to do things like percentages, parts of a whole, totals, anything like that.
Question? Sorry, yeah. So in that example, would that be like useful if you were trying to work out the total amount of exercise like on Sunday as a percentage of the whole week? Would that be the reason for using that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'll probably have this as the total for the whole week,
Yeah.
and then I could put that next to
Yes.
the normal total and then divide by what exactly.
Can we use the or function instead of the
All, yes, all. Technically, it's a table function, so it actually returns a table with remove filters. All remove filters was new, added. Basically, all was a bit confusing as well, named, but all will, in this case, in 99% of the cases, all and remove filters will do the same thing. Remove filters was a special one added just to make also terminology a bit clear, because I think remove filters is a better way for a function that removes filters.
Do you cover all concepts in this talk?
No.
Oh.
I can cover it at the end, maybe. You can also, in remove filters, give it a complete table. So I'm going to say remove filters anything from the date table. Now, one thing with these expanded tables is it always remembers kind of the source and what tables they came from. So I've built out my expanded tables, but you can see I remember that this is the date. So any columns that came from this date table will now be removed. So in this measure, we'll basically say ignore any filters that are on the dates. So I can put date slices and nothing will happen. So anything in this columns will be ignored, which is the date. And so that will also be ignored. And so the filter again will only apply to the end. Third thing we can do is if we use, assuming we're using a nice star schema and we're using expanded tables, what we call this is like the base table, right? Because this is the one that we're aggregating, this is the main side that we're expanding into. If we put this into the remove filters, it works a bit maybe counterintuitively, but what it actually does is it says you're applying remove filters to the base table, remove all filters. So it's a bit of a weird one, but it actually extends out to all of the expanded table when you use the base. So it's a good one if you want, for some reason, to have something that can never be filtered, like your master total. I don't know. You will find use cases for a lot of this in different situations. So this will remove all the filters and basically filter none. All right. Hopefully we're still going. DAX newbies, hopefully this is opening up a whole new world of DAX for you. It's not known to be an easy language under the surface, I'll say that. Implicit remove filters. So the next thing I want to cover is we looked at how to specifically remove filters from calculations. When you write calculate, you can write it, and often would, in a format like this. We're going to, again, we're not going to cover calculate here. You can go and practice if you've not used. I think most people have. But this is saying we're going to sum the minutes exercise. Now we're going to calculate, just it lets you apply filters or remove filters and change the filter context. We're saying filter, so add a filter where the animal equals gorilla. So that's filters within the DAX statement. So on this one, I've now said though, apply a filter where the animal equals gorilla, apply a filter where the animal equals crocodile. And here, because this is a filter saying crocodile, this is a filter saying gorilla. Any guesses on what you think the answer would be? You look like you had a question, but now.
No, I was going to try and, well, I
Yeah.
was going to try and, like, I think the one on the left does not overwrite whatever we did on the right, so, yeah.
Yeah, so you've probably seen this if you used it. This has an implicit remove filters. So when you write this under the surface, and DAX is what we call our functional language. So right, you write a function and you give it some words and it goes and does something. So there's a lot of stuff that happens under the surface you don't see. Under the surface, it doesn't show this, but it writes this, it adds this. It says remove filters because I put animal here. We're saying we'll remove filters for animal and then apply my own filter of gorilla. So essentially, the filter context it has on is essentially this, because we have crocodile from the table and we have animal right here and gorilla here. What it's saying is saying remove filters and then add the filter next of what I want. So it sort of overwrites, but theoretically it's going to remove any filters you have on this column because I called it, and then adding my own. And then it's going to sum up everything that's left in this column. So that would be, in this case, 20, and gorilla is going to be 20 as well, because this is, again, doing the same thing. It's going to remove gorilla, but then re-add gorilla, so it's going to be gorilla. The total. The filter context in here, right now, we'll cover this a bit more. Total, right, and if you've used DAX, you know this isn't the sum of everything in the table. What total really means is it just says, what is this number without the filter context of any of the rows here? So it's saying don't apply any additional filter context from that table. So the total is going to be 20 because it's going to do the same thing. It's going to say remove the filter context if there's any others applied. There wasn't in the total, and then add the gorilla. So in this case, it's got this implicit remove filters that is going to show the same number when I show it against the animal column. Okay, so let's talk through the 3 filter locations. So we mentioned this at the beginning, but there's 3 ways we can filter. And again, I want to just kind of reiterate this point. Even if you have a graph here, always just think of this as a table when you come to DAX. This number here, for example, works the same as if you've got a row in a filter. So you have the date of the month is January. We have a filter here of a slice on the page to say the animal's crocodile. And then we've got a slicer here, a filter here, to say the day is Monday, right? So there's 3 ways this can come through. I always think of this though as a table. So even if you have a graph that looks like this, I always change my graphs to tables when I'm trying to actually do that. So I would start with tables. All graphs can be represented as tables, and it's much easier to think of it that way when you're working through DAX. So we can say this blue one here, that comes from the query inside the DAX. This comes from outside the visual, as in this is the number that we're talking about right now, the filter context. It's in this visual. This comes from outside that visual. And then it has, in this case, a row inside that visual as well. The next row is going to be the same thing, except the day is going to be the filter context to Saturday. The third one obviously to Sunday. And here, when we get to the total, again, this isn't any sort of sum. What this is here is it's only got these two filter contexts. So it's ignoring any filter context inside the visual, and that's what a total row is. And it's only showing the filter context from the query and the DAX. We'll go through this because this causes a lot of confusion with people. If I write this, right now, I'm saying calculate the sum of the minutes exercise plus the max of the minutes exercise, which is an odd calculation to do, but it demonstrates this point well. For this number, what is the filter context here? It's just Monday, right? Because we have filter context from inside the visual here on Monday. There's no filters inside the DAX, and there's no slices on the page. So we just have that for Monday. If I look how this works, it's going to build my expanded table out. I'm going to say filter down for Monday, find the sum of it, which is 80, plus the max of this, which is 45. And so that's going to be 125. And that's why I get 125. If I look at the total though, again, you can see obviously the total doesn't sum up, right? 125, 45 doesn't make 150. But what the total's looking at is it's basically looking at this because there's no filter context anywhere else. There's no filter context applied to that total number. There's no slices on it. There's nothing inside that calculates statement. So it's just looking at the entire column. So we're going to sum this up, which is 105, add the max, which again is the same 45, and that's going to be 150. So the totals is always the absence of filter context from within the visual. You'll still have, filter context if you apply from outside the visual or inside the DAX. So again, we can go through. We say, let's go back to this example. This specific number, we have 3 filter contexts. We have it from our DAX, so we've coded it inside the DAX, outside the visual, and then inside the visual. So outside the visual on this slicer, and then inside the visual from the row on the table. All selected is a really, really useful function that I want to cover. This is, if you've ever read the DAX documents, I just copied this. The official DAX help, it's almost like they were trying to make it more complex for you. And I think they want to put off people learning DAX, but remove context filters in the current query while retaining all other context filters or explicit filters. And it goes on to be more very confusing words. What this does is it basically, if we say we have these 3, let's just keep it a bit simpler now. So I've just got to calculate the total exercise, right? And I've got the inside the query here, and then outside the query here. If I add all selected, what it does is it says it removes the filter context from inside the visual, essentially. So it's going to remove filters on anything inside the visual, which is that purple bit. So all selected will remove anything from inside that visual. So in this case, it's going to be the same number as the total, because it's saying all of these filter contexts is going to be more. So this is a really, really useful when you're trying to do percentages and you want someone to drop something in as that visual and they can break it down in different ways. So that's a very, very helpful function. You can add arguments into the all selected so it only affects certain tables, certain columns. All right. Any questions on that one? Yes.
Was it all selected removing, clearly it was removing the filter context from within the visual?
Yes, for sure.
Does it retain both the, should we say, the slice of what filter context and anything in the DAX?
Yes.
Both of those?
Yes. So yeah, great question. I'm glad you were following at least. Yeah, so all these, the question was, all selected. It only affects the inside the visual data filter context. It retains anything else you have from slices, and it retains anything you've hard coded into the DAX itself. One of my favorites, if you want to, have totals on a column and percentages, and you don't need to know exactly what's going in the visual, you can just put it
So remove filters and all selected doesn't mean same.
No. Remove filters. You have to specify columns or tables to remove filters from that specific column or table. So it doesn't matter whether it comes from inside the visual or outside the visual. You're saying remove any filters applied from this specific column, from this specific table. All selected says I will remove filters from any filter context that comes from within the visual. So
The last one. So on that one, then you've got to see inside the total exercise. It's the crocodile doesn't move on that, so that's levels.
correct. So the crocodile is still being applied. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's basically ignoring the day, which is this one with a scale Monday. So if I use this slicer, all of these numbers would be the same as each other, but they would change as I
But that was much, but was selected. I can't think of crocodiles and select. But yeah.
The names of the functions are another topic. They're not very useful. And then you look at the documents and you say, this name doesn't make sense. I'll read the description, and then it's even less useful. Some question?
Yeah. So you said to retain filters that are shaded, for instance, into the measure. It will retain that, right? And then retain filters from slides, right?
Yes.
So this Monday filters, where is it coming from? How was it applied?
This.
Yeah, that's the filter inside. How is it?
So this is just a column in your data table.
Okay.
And as I have this column, right, in the data table, what that's going to do, when I'm building, so this is a visual, I have the column, okay, and it's going to apply this filter for each row. Okay. But then we remove. All right. Question.
So if we were to translate that all selected into normal person's English, it'd be remove visual and filters.
Yes, that would be a much better name for it. Yeah.
So they decide.
Yeah. Yeah. Side note, I have this at the end. We have on the 30th of January, we have the co-inventor of DAX come on our live stream and edit this. Come and ask it. Jeffrey Wang, he's absolutely phenomenal, much smarter than I am at this stuff. But yeah, some of the naming, some of the descriptions aren't easy. And before remove filters, it was, as I said, you had to do all, and all didn't sound like it was removing. Questions up? Good. Told you this is going to get. So there's a lot of slides, but it's going to get a lot of theory. We're going to ramp up a little bit towards the end, especially. The last bit, I will maybe not spend too much time. So I want to show you a couple of cool things at the end. Don't worry if you don't get it. That's kind of the high level for those who sent new. Don't worry. This is complex, as I say. So really, I just want to introduce the concepts. You'll need to reinforce this and practice it a lot with anything similar. So you'll hear this, and there is a reason why we say this, why people say this. Any filter is actually a table function using expanded tables. It's a very confusing sentence. What that means is in DAX, you can write table functions, right? You can write a lot of functions, return a whole table. You can't visualize that in a measure because you have to have a value, but there are a lot of functions which return a whole table, such as filter. Essentially, what this does is, if I was to write this, another way of writing this would be, it actually says, create a table of the distinct animal types, remove filters, animal types, so actually, as we said, removing any other filters, and then have it set to gorilla. And that is actually what a filter is. Filters are always tables, which is a very confusing thing. To your point where you said all, that's the same as all. So the difference between all and remove filters is that all actually returns a table. So you can have it as a table function in DAX. You can create a table for all. Remove filters only is for the calculate statement. It just removes them. It doesn't return anything. But if we want to do that, when we say animal type equals gorilla, what that's really doing underneath the surface is just saying, I'm going to translate that into a table. And let's see what that means. And I like to think of this, if your SQL, expanded tables perform an inner join. So if I was to write this, you can see here, I'm going to use filter. Filter is a table function. So I can write filter and it's going to return a table. So I can say filter the animal table where the animal type equals gorilla. And I'm using that as my filter context. So what it does is it first says, okay, let's filter this in here because this is its own thing. I'm saying filter this as a table. And this is the way I like to think of it with expanded tables. Then when I say, let's make my expanded table, it's effectively, well, if you into SQL doing a unit join. Because I've already pre-filtered this table, it's going to say, well, these rows, the blank ones, basically get ignored. That might sound a bit weird and strange, and you're thinking, well, why would I think that? There's some really, really powerful ways you can see that.
So make an inner join with SQL.
Yeah, it performs like an inner join when you build those extended tables. You don't know SQL, don't worry. But essentially, we're saying, filter the animal table to gorilla. Okay, we're doing that first. And so now this is the filter context, the filter I'm adding. I'm adding that as a filter. So it's saying, well, when you use filters, it uses expanded tables. So expand my table out. But then these were the rows I didn't have any matches in my filtered table. So they get ignored. Why is that cool? Because this is a really cool pattern, I think it's cool. Let's say we have this 2 fact tables for now, and then 1 dimension. So we have the animal. We also weigh our animals and we exercise them to make sure they're healthy, I guess. So you have the weight of the animals. We weigh them, and weighing animals is a fact table because we weigh them at a certain time. The weight's going to change over time. So we have the animals, we weigh them in the date. We also have the animals, the date, and how much we exercise them, and then just add a table. If I said this, if I wanted to just write this function, so I write a function saying filter the weight, where the weight is over 100 kilos. So this is going to use the expanded table because we always use expanded tables. Even though this table is not being used in this function, internally it's going to build out this expanded table and then filter this over 100. What I can do now, though, as I said, in our calculate, all filters are tables. So I can use this as a function in my calculate. So I'm saying, and this is where it gets pretty interesting and quite theoretical and more complex. Sum the minutes exercised. So from the other fact table, and again, these fact tables, they don't have any direct relation where they can filter each other because they're 2 separate fact tables. You have 1 dimension which can filter them both, but the fact tables themselves can't interact. And there's no bidirectional, there's no many to many because we like star schema. However, I can do this. I can say filter the minutes exercise table where the weight table is greater than 100, which because these 2 tables don't talk to each other, you would think if you were logical and not writing DAX, that wouldn't affect each other because you're saying I'm filtering 1 fact table and using that as a function in my other fact table. However, what happens is that because I filtered on the expanded table, that expanded table includes my dimension. And now, when I look to sum the minutes exercise, I need to do an expanded table on this fact table as well. This dimension table has already been filtered by the weight is over 100. And I see a few nodding, and I probably see a lot of going over your head. This is very complex.
Okay, so 102 dimensions. So
You can wait a few minutes and find out. So again, what's going to happen is it's going to build the expanded table, but there's no matches for 2 because the animal 2 was under 100 kilos, and essentially that's been filtered out of the dimension. And so it moves over there for some reason, but then it's going to filter like this. And then, because I'm saying the sum of the minutes exercise, it's just going to sum whatever's left in this column. So I know we've got covered a lot here. If you can understand this, I would say a lot of DAX developers, most that I've seen, this is very high level, right? So this is very complex stuff, but it's really can change the way you write DAX. Ready, segue? What if we have 2 dimensions, for example? So we basically have a dual star schema here with nice conformance dimensions. We have a date which affects both, and the animal which affects both. Let's do the same thing. Filter the weight for over 100. We'll rebuild the expanded table. So we do our join here. And in a join, but nothing's been filtered just yet. So we have the whole data set. Same thing with our data table. You can tell I like PowerPoint as well and making animations here. What we're going to do is we're going to filter the weight to over 100 again. So exactly what we just did. We're just building this, filter the weight with the weight over 100. We build out our expanded table where we join all the tables into it. And we say now filter this weight column. We have the 2 dimensions. Now we can use this table to filter the weight rate. So this is basically the table that this returns. If I was to do this in the DAX, you wouldn't see these 2. If I was to do this in Power BI, because this is the internal table and it's different to what you see. But this is what happens underneath the surface. I can then use this table as a filter. Same thing. I want to calculate the minutes exercise, which is the sum of the minutes exercise, using this filter weight over 100. What's happened is that it's basically filtered to 2-dimension tables already because it's part of the expanded table. So this is what's left of that animal dimension. Now let's build the other expanded table of the minutes exercise. So this is my minutes exercise table. I join in my animal to build the expanded table. Of course, this has been filtered by the filter, this one, the weight of that expanded table. And then I have to join in the dates as well, because there's a relationship between them, and it's an expanded table, and you always build in all the tables. So this is actually going to filter out all the blanks. And so any blanks here is going to be an inner join if you know that SQL. It's going to remove anything which doesn't have a match in any of the tables. So it's only going to be these top 2 rows. And then it's going to sum this exercise. That was a very complex one. Any questions on that? I know it was very complex.
Something just really mind. You need to look at your charts again. You've been using the dates, you've been using analyzing the dates and put it on. We go back a couple of slides.
In the yellows here.
We go back a couple of slides more. Go back a bit more.
More.
Just to be doing this to everyone else.
Sorry.
There we go.
There you go.
Oh, yeah, copy and paste there. Thank you for that. Thanks.
Could you sort of filter this? Get a lot. We do it with like songs and stuff. Really, like the song and like and stuff like that.
This has to be a table returned.
Right.
So you can see, you know, where weight is over. You can write table expressions if you get really complex. It gets difficult, but you can do that.
Sorry, I'm sure any of us that have used DAX have probably got what we might consider wrong answers first time round. And that last scenario you showed us looks like it might produce some really counterintuitive results.
Yes.
Does it actually produce the result you want? Because it just seems like that probably isn't what you want.
No,
Use it.
that you probably wouldn't use it that because it filters reads popular. It probably wouldn't. You probably wouldn't use that very often in that context. What you can do though is I can say it's really good. For example, you know, customers who haven't bought in the last month or something like that, because you can make tables of customers, filter to the customers who made a purchase in the last month, and use that as a filter context, that kind of stuff. If that makes sense. There's a lot of patterns I would advise going
So,
for.
but my first level takeaway is probably I want to try and avoid that kind of inadvertent scenario.
Yeah.
Rather than-
It is really because that really is saying that by using this, will it put anything in the weight, any animal or any date, right, that has a weight of over 100. I know I spread those filters. There's another question.
Yeah. So how did you explain the creation of this expanded table in Power BI?
It happens internally, right? It's what happens by the engine. You don't see this.
Oh, okay.
Never exposed. It's the engine does it.
As you were doing it, I was just imagining this in SQL.
Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, I get it. Yeah, thank you.
All right, we'll go through just wrap up here. One thing is that sometimes we like to build, well, we don't like to build, people build snowflake schemas and they don't use star schema. There's a reason we always say use star schema. Let's have a look at this. The match weight, where the animal is gorilla, and this is just or. You've seen this is just an or cow. So I can see the animal is gorilla or cow. If I'm using this star schema, if you saw my model, that the animal was joined to the exercise, and then the exercise was joined to the other fact table directly. What it would happen is it would filter here. It would build the expanded tables. I'm not going to go through it all, but then it would filter this, because the filter has to follow from this table to this table. It couldn't build an expanded table because they don't work when you have many. And it basically just filters on the animal ID. So because these tables are joined by the animal ID, what it does is it first filters gorilla or cow, and it says the animal ID is 1 or 2. Filter this table to the animal ID 1 or 2, which then says filter this table to the animal's 1 or 2. And that actually works in this case. However, what if I say the match weight for the animal is turtle? You'll notice turtle has the ID 3. So I filter this, turtle the ID 3. It has to go via the exercise table we're not using, but because it's a snowflake schema, that's how the relationships were set up. The turtle doesn't get exercise, it's a turtle. It's obvious. There's no turtle in this, right? So there is a turtle. It does get weight because it's a turtle, but there's no exercise. So even though we're trying to say the max weight of the turtles. However, because the relationship has to pass through this intermediary table, it's going to say, well, there's nothing here, so filter this for nothing. So you kind of lose that, and because of this snowflake schema, you get incorrect results. Don't do it. It's very difficult to track. The other one that we'll probably leave with is I will say bidirectional and many-to-many don't use the expanded tables. So if you have bidirectional and many-to-many joins, everything you just learned is different in a much more confusing way. This is one of the big reasons why we love star schema. Optimization, all of this stuff, but it makes your DAX so much easier. Isn't demo, but yeah, I will leave you with that. Thank you very much. If there's any questions, no. We've had quite a few. Oh, thank you very much. Very much. Thank you, everyone. Yeah, this session very important for myself as well. I think understanding that sort of level of understanding in terms of DAX and complex questions is quite challenging. So if you do get your head around it, it does benefit you quite a lot when you come to like DAX as well. We've got some pizzas next door. So we've catered for vegan, vegetarian. I think there's some halal as well. If you are meat eaters, if you can start with the meat and veggies, start with the veggies. You can do it that way. I just don't want nothing left for the veggies once they're started. But yeah, we'll do some networking, grab a drink, we'll have some time in the other room just to chat. But thanks for coming. Hopefully see you next one. Thanks for that's brilliant. Do you on LinkedIn or something like that? Yeah. All right. Thanks. Yeah, no, thanks. That's really good. Yeah, that's why I'm used that quite a lot. So I'm going to drop results in it. Yeah. Like this guy is the model. No use. This is what the hell is yeah.